Hi, I'm Kirsten. Welcome to Kirsten Doing Stuff. Today I'm going to show you some of the treats that I make, my homemade treats that I make for Christmas. This is one that my friends have asked me to make a video on to show people how it's done. So I'm going to start with my cornbread in a jar. I have an excellent sweet cornbread recipe. It's one of my favorites. It's not terribly sweet. It doesn't taste like a dessert. It's just sweeter than a normal cornbread and generally comes out very moist if you make it right. And so what I do is I mix up the dry ingredients and put it in a jar, include the instructions and a nice spatula, and it's a homemade Christmas gift. So we're gonna start with the dry ingredients for this recipe is just flour, sugar, cornmeal, baking powder, and salt. I'll show you a couple of my kitchen things that I like along the way. These plastic containers for my flour and sugar I get at Walmart. They're like $5. And then I use my label maker to label them. I know what flour looks like, but some other people that come into my house apparently don't know the difference between flour, sugar, powdered sugar, and baking soda. So I label them. And then one thing that I always do for baking is I keep powdered milk in my kitchen, in my pantry. I buy this big sack at Walmart and it's $20, makes 20 quarts. And the reason why I like to keep this in my pantry is for any baking that I do, because generally I don't keep milk in my refrigerator, but if I do, it might not be the best for baking. I'll buy lactose-free milk, or some people like soy milk and almond milk and things like that. The powdered regular milk actually does really well in baking. You don't taste the difference like you would if you were drinking it, and it's shelf stable. So I buy that big sack of powdered milk and it lasts me usually all year for any baking that I'm doing. I do use a lot at Christmas. And I keep it in one of these as well. I don't know if you could see this, but I like to put the label on there with the amount to use to make a cup of milk, a half a cup of milk, and some different measurements like that. And then it makes it really easy if I'm making biscuits and it calls for a cup of milk, just 1/3 of a cup scoop into my larger mixing measuring cup and mix it with water. And I know I'll always have milk for any baking that I'm doing. So just a couple things that I like to do. Okay, so I'm gonna get started here with my cornmeal mix that I'm making and just kind of aerating the flour a little bit. I just do it with a spoon instead of using a sifter. I know that's not exactly the right way to do it, but that way I don't have to buy a sifter and keep it in my tiny kitchen. So this recipe calls for 1.5 cups of flour, and I just kind of spoon it into the measuring cup. Try not to pack it down at all because that will affect the texture, and the more flour that you add to this, the more that you're going to lose some of that nice moisture that's usually in this cornbread. So I have one now, and then, sorry, you probably can't see what I'm doing, but I'm still new at making videos, so I just have it aimed at my face. And then my cornmeal, half a cup in the bowl, and sugar. I have the 1/3 cup scoop. I'm going to add 2/3 of a cup of white sugar. And next, I wouldn't do this when I'm making the recipe normally. Okay, normally I'm going to put the milk, eggs, oil, and melted butter separately from the dry ingredients and mix them up. But when I make this in the jar and I do all the dry ingredients, I add the 1/3 cup of powdered milk to the dry ingredients. And that's just one less ingredient that people I'm giving this gift to have to add when they're making it. And then, where did I put my measuring spoons? Right here. It is a tablespoon of baking powder and a half a teaspoon of salt. So add that. I'm sorry if I'm all over the camera, you guys. I am really new at this, so If you don't like the video, you don't have to watch it. Okay, there is my tablespoon of baking powder. And you guys, I never really measure that half teaspoon of salt. I kind of guesstimate it. Throw it in there. So, these are all the dry ingredients. I'll read it for you one more time in case you want to keep this recipe. We have a half a cup of cornmeal, 1.5 cups of flour, 2/3 of a cup of sugar, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of salt-ish. And then I'm just going to stir this up. I just stir it with a spoon. For the dry ingredients, you don't need to mix it up super well. So I'm just stirring it with a spoon. The wet ingredients that go in this normally would be 3 tablespoons of melted butter, 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil, 2 eggs, 1¼ cups of milk. So you would mix that up separately, mix the dry and the wet, put it into a greased 9x9 pan and bake it for about 30 minutes. But since I'm just mixing up the dry ingredients to put in a jar, and I did the 1/3 of a cup of powdered milk into the dry ingredients, when I print this out to give with the Christmas gifts, I'm going to print out an altered recipe. Instead of 1¼ cups of milk, they'll just need 1 cup of water, and then the 2 eggs, the 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil, and the 3 tablespoons of melted butter. I figured just one less ingredient people have to buy to make it when they receive it. And like I said, I don't usually stock milk in my refrigerator these days. I did when my son was little, but not anymore. And makes it a little easier for them to enjoy. So I print out that altered recipe and I put it in the bag along with this gift. Now, so I have the dry ingredients mixed up. I have a mason jar. This is, I think, it's a 4 cup. I don't know, you guys, I'm sorry. About a 24 ounce, or I think it holds 32 if you fill it to the top. That's what size mason jar. So these are the more common size that I use for like the hot cocoa gifts that I do, and these ones are a little bit bigger. Man, I'm terribly prepared. So this is a cool thing. It's like the jar filler. It's kind of like a funnel. I either got it on Amazon or at Walmart. It was under $5. Put it on top of the jar, and then you can really easily put all that stuff in there without spilling any out. And then with this jar, I'll probably just tie some curling ribbon around the top and get my lid. And I like to include a spatula along with it. So this spatula, guess what? Got it at Dollar Tree. I think it's a nice dark blue color, which I love blues for Christmas. I like to wrap all my gifts and do a lot of blues and reds to have a little bit of a red, white, and blue color theme going on for my Christmas. And I think that this fits nicely in a wine bag, to be honest, which I have a lot of. So I have this wine bag, put the jar in there along with the spatula. I still need to print out the recipe and Christmas gift. And that's a pretty inexpensive one. All those ingredients are really cheap. Just flour, cornmeal, sugar, salt, and all of that. And so that makes a very inexpensive gift. And then the other one that I'm going to show you is how to make my cocoa, since I have everything out already. I'll just show that one real quickly. This is going to be, I just do equal parts of sugar, cocoa powder, like baking cocoa, and powdered milk. So I just put 2 cups of sugar in a bowl. Whoops, dropped my lid. And 2 cups of powdered milk. And then I like the generic. It's less than half the price of the name brand. And 2 cups, which I wonder if I could just throw this in. I believe this container It is the 8-ounce size. It's the normal one that they sell. I'm gonna kind of guesstimate, but I think we're getting about 2 cups out of this. Yeah, I'm throwing the whole thing in. I'm pretty sure that was around 2 cups. Then I forgot to get my whisk out. Here we go. I have a metal bowl because the cocoa will kind of stain the plastic bowls. And then just stir it up. And again, this one doesn't take long either, to be honest. So not only are these fairly inexpensive gifts and they're unique because they're homemade, but they're also a pretty quick gift to make too. And along with this, I mentioned on my last video, I like to include the little tiny bottles. They're 99 cents at Total Wine. And I include with the cocoa a little bottle of the cinnamon flavored whiskey and vanilla vodka. And they're both super yummy in hot cocoa. And then I'll include a Christmas mug from the Dollar Tree. And that's how I do the hot cocoa. If you want, you can always add marshmallows to the jar. Once you pour the cocoa mix into the jar, you can add mini chocolate chips I've done sometimes, or I like to get almond bark and shave it. It looks really pretty. The little shavings, I just do it on a regular cheese grater, and it just adds a nice sweetness and texture to the cocoa because it's these soft little shavings and they have a lot of sugar, but they're tasty. Okay, so those are 2 of my homemade treats that I give people for Christmas. Pretty simple, right? And pretty inexpensive. So I hope you enjoy it. Have a good day.